Hi class, how are you today? You know I can't hear you, right? Anyway, the learning target for today is to solve equations with fractions and decimals. We haven't been dealing too much with equations with fractions and decimals in them, so I want to give you some good strategies to be able to get rid of the fractions and decimals really easily in order to make the equations much easier to deal with. Let's get started. Alright, so let's look at this equation. We have 2/3 x plus 5 equals 1 over 6. So the first step you always want to take before you even start the equation with any of your steps, first by getting rid of the fractions. What you want to do here is look at the denominators, the numbers on bottom. Here we have a 3 and we have a 6. We want to know what is the smallest number that both of these multiply into, the least common multiple. So we have 3 and we have 6. So what number can 3 and 6 both multiply into? Well, 3 times 2 is 6 and 6 times 1 is 6, so they can both multiply into 6. So you want to multiply everything in the entire equation by 6. So you put the entire equation around parentheses and multiply the whole thing by 6. So you're going to distribute 6 to 2/3 x, to 5, and all the way over to 1 over 6, the entire equation. Now you might think at first that you're going to have to multiply fractions now, so it's actually going to make it difficult, but it gets rid of the fractions and it's really easy. So this makes the equation become 6 times 2/3 x plus 6 times 5 equals 6 times 1 over 6. So the easiest way to do this is to take the 6 and first divide by the number on bottom. So first divide, then take that number you get and then multiply by the number on top. So let's do this. So we have 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then multiply that by the 2 on top, and that'll give us 4. So here we had 6 divided by 3 is 2, times 2 is 4, so 6 times 2/3 is 4. And then let's write the x there. Then we have 6 times 5 will give us 30, so plus 30. Then we have 6 times 1 over 6. Do the same thing. First divide, then multiply. So divide by the bottom, multiply by the top. So 6 divided by 6 will give us 1, and then times 1 is 1. So the right side will equal 1. And now it's just a two-step equation, so we'll solve it like normal. So we need to undo the addition and subtract 30, and that'll give us 4x equals negative 29, and then undo the multiplication, so divide both sides by 4, and that gives us x equals negative 29 over 4. And that's fine to leave your answer as a fraction. I don't need it as a decimal. Feel free to leave it just like it is as a fraction. If it needs to be reduced, though, please reduce it fully. But this one, negative 29 over 4, can't be reduced, so that's your final answer. Alright, here's another problem. So this time we have 3/4 is being multiplied by x plus 5 in parentheses, and then that equals 2/3. So, again, to get rid of these fractions first, we put the entire equation into parentheses, and then we want to find what number do 4 and 3 both multiply into. Well, 4 times 3 is 12, and 3 times 4 is 12, so they both multiply into 12. So let's multiply the entire equation by 12. So we take 12, and we want to multiply it by everything in the parentheses. One note, though. Since x plus 5 is already in parentheses and being multiplied by something, you only multiply the number in front of the parentheses by 12, not the x plus 5. So 12 is going to be multiplied by 3/4, and 12 is going to be multiplied by 2/3. So the x plus 5 doesn't get multiplied by because it's in parentheses being multiplied by 3/4. So that means we're going to have 12 times 3/4 times x plus 5 equals 12 times 2/3. So again, make sure to divide by the bottom number first, and then multiply that number by the top. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. Then we write the rest of what we have, so x plus 5, and then equals, so again, divide first, so 12 divided by 3 will give us 4, and then times 2 will give us 8. So now this looks like a very nicer equation, a much nicer equation. So now we use the distributive property and multiply 9 times x and 9 times 5, because x plus 5 is in parentheses, and that will give us 9x plus 45 equals 8, and then subtract 45 from both sides. Will give us 9x equals negative 37. Then we want to take 9x and divide both sides by 9. And that gives us x equals negative 37 over 9. And again, it can't be reduced, so it's fine if you leave that as your answer. I actually prefer fractions over decimals, so feel free to leave that as your answer. Now this time we have decimals instead of fractions. So what we need to look for first is how many decimal places over are each of the numbers. So 0.32, that's 2 decimal places over. 0.1, 1 decimal point, 1.5, 1 decimal point. So we take the most number of decimal points, that was the 0.32, that's 2 decimal points, And what we need to do now is multiply the entire equation by 1 and the number of zeros that are equal to the number of decimal points over it was. So 2 decimal points, so 2 zeros. So we need to multiply the entire equation by 100. So that means 100 times 0.32, 100 times 0.1, and 100 times 1.5. So when you multiply by 100, you just move the decimal point over 2 spaces. So 100 times 0.32 will be 32x minus 100 times 0.1, move it over 2 places, so 1, 2, so that means we have to add a 0 at the end. So that'll give us minus 10, and then that equals, again, 100 times 1.5. We take the point, move it over 2 decimal places, so that means, again, we'll have to add a 0 right here, so that'll give us 150. And now it's a 2-step equation, and we can solve. So add 10 to both sides, and that gives us 32x equals 160. Then divide both sides by 32, and that will give us x equals 50. Alright, so that's the lesson for today. It's just getting rid of fractions by multiplying by the least common multiple, or getting rid of decimals by multiplying by 10, 100,000, the number of zeros you need for the number of decimal places there are. So, that's it. Please make sure to take notes over the entire thing, and bring them next class, and have a good night.